Hello, everyone, and welcome to Out of Nowhere. Well, my guest tonight is Kate Ray. So, on today's show, we are joined by writer, paranormal investigator, folklorist Kate Ray, author of a fascinating new book, The Woolly Snuffs, author of the fascinating The Curious Case of the Wallington Warlation Gnomes. The book takes us deep into one of Nottingham's strangest legends, the 1979 sighting of the Wallation Gnomes, retold with wonder and a touch of eerie charm. Kate brings the gnomes world to life, weaving together. Can we please welcome Kate to the show? Hello there.
Thank you very much. That was a lovely welcome. Thank you.
When we talk about it, what first drew you to the mysterious case of the Wallachian gnomes, and why did you decide to retell the story?
So I live in Nottinghamshire. I grew up in Nottinghamshire. And like many people, a massive fan of 14 Times magazine. And I came across the case when I was a teenager and looked at the case and went, what an absolute load of tosh. It was just sounded so utterly ridiculous that it went to one side, never thought about it again until about 4 years ago. And Dr. Simon Young from the Fairy Investigation Society approached me and asked me to write an essay for one of his books about the Wollerton gnomes. And as I was writing it, I just kept getting more and more questions that nobody seemed to be asking. And actually, the only people that could, or the only beings that could answer those questions would have been the gnomes.
Mm.
So I completed the essay, and it's a retelling. So the Woolly Snots is a retelling from the gnomes' perspective of the encounter that took place.
Right, yeah. The title itself is intriguing. What does Wally Snots mean, and how did you come up with it?
Oh, I hated the title. Honestly, it was one of those times when I felt like I was being channeled by the gnomes. I often say I was used by the gnomes to tell their story. And the woolly snots comes from woolly is a sort of I suppose a sweet nickname for Wollerton, as in Wollerton Park, and snots is as in Snottingham. So people from Nottingham years ago were called snots from Snottingham, which means cave dweller. So the two came together, and I hated the title. I went to a friend of mine and said, please, please, please talk me out of this title. And they said, no, it's brilliant. You've got to keep it. So that's where the woolly snots came from.
How strange is that? Yeah, your book tells a tale of the gnome's perspective. Why did you choose the narrative angle, and how does it change the way readers experience the story?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think I chose the angle. Like I say, I think the gnomes kind of chose me. I kept getting questions such as, for instance, in the case, the gnomes let off a light or they emitted a glow, and I wondered why. And they also drove cars that hovered around the park, and I wondered why they were hovering cars, why they didn't have wheels. They also had a language that the children in the encounter described as a laughter language. So these were all questions that I know nobody could really give me the answers to, but the gnomes possibly could. So I asked these questions as I was going through, and from there, it started off basically with so why the gnomes? The question, why are the gnomes in Nottingham? So I looked at their history. So I put down the history of the gnomes. I looked at what their social aspect was, so how they interact with each other, how they interacted with human beings, how they interacted with wildlife. So all these little elements sort of came together to create this world. And when I say create this world, I don't think I created it. I wrote this book in 7 days. The first book was 7 days,
My God,
and
that is
I
good.
couldn't I couldn't sleep. Honestly, I couldn't sleep. I was barely eating. I just had to get it out on paper. I'm not a writer by trade. That's not what I do. And it was when I got to the end of it, I just thought, now what am I going to do with this? Where am I going to go with this? But yeah, it was. I do joke that it was from the names, but I do think that it was from something outside myself that kind of helped write that book.
How did you balance folklore and fantasy and elements in the book?
Oh, so I mean, the folklore aspect of it was quite. It's that was quite an easy journey. We have all the elements of the case as it is. So, everything that we need to know from the children's perspective and what happened after is all there. Being from Nottingham, I've got a good understanding of the folklore in Nottinghamshire as it is. So that was pretty easy to do. The fantasy element, gnomes are a pretty easy character when it comes to writing about. They're not particularly complex characters. They like a simple life. They're quite like hobbits, they like their food, they like their garden, they love their family, and it's quite a gentle existence that they have. So combined with this adventure, it's very much the encounter with the children that took place kind of rocked the world. It kind of blew apart a lot of their ideals about what life was like and how they'd arrived at Nottingham. Um, so what that side of it, I found perhaps the easiest side of it, just to sort of meander through Nottinghamshire as a whole and these characters that I'd come to understand.
What role did the Reverend Lionel and Patricia Fanthorpe play in shaping the book alongside you?
Oh, so I, like a lot of people, came across Lionel's work first through 14 Times, then through 14 TV. It was one of those things that I would stay up late for and watch it on a tiny little black and white telly that was
Yeah,
literally that big, big as your head. And I couldn't see it. Sometimes it would go fuzzy and I'd have to try and tune it in better to see, the raining fish and things. And Lionel became kind of a beacon for me in the paranormal, of somebody who'd got a really good balance between researching sometimes some really quite dark subject matter, but having this curious nature and this buoyancy. So he kind of weighs up to me how you should be as an investigator, how I would like to be as an investigator. And fast forward a few years, I emailed him out of the blue and asked him some advice just about paranormal investigation and ways to move forward. And to my surprise, he got back in contact with me, and we kind of corresponded from there on in. And so on the paranormal side, investigative side, and on the curious side, he definitely has, shaped how I go into these things. He's such a lovely man, such a lovely man.
mm,
He's a gem. He is a gem.
yeah. I've never met him. I've heard a lot about him from a couple of friends of mine who live in Hornsey.
Yeah.
They've spoken to him numerous times and gone to visit him, so I do know a little bit about him. Um, do you see gnomes and fairies as purely mythological, or do you think they reflect something deeper about human connection with nature?
Oh, but I don't think that they're just sort of segregated into mythology at all. I truly do believe that we have other dimensional worlds that butt up to ours, and fairies definitely are one of them. They are an ancient race, probably older than humans. They come up in human history before writing. Um, I do think that there is some real nature to them. What that is, though, I think we all struggle with what that may be, but I don't think they are, consigned to just children's books. I think it's something that we've forgotten and that we have um, not got quite the relationship that we used to have with these beings. We've kind of drifted from having a strong relationship with them, and as we've drifted away from having a relationship with the natural environment, I think the two came side by side, but definitely not mythology. I think there's too many people had too many experiences, even right up until, modern day. People are still having experiences with these non-human entities that don't fit into a sort of a religious category.
Yeah, some people, I'm going to say this as well, some people are chosen to see things. I know many
Mhm.
times Paul's talked about one of the farmers, uh, uh, children had been looking out of a window and saw some gnomes walking up the path.
Yep.
And then drew the curtains back and jumped into bed. And then the next morning, at breakfast time, never said out to the parents. And his sister went, "Did you see them gnomes last night?" How strange is that?
Oh, it's lovely. I tell you though, I don't know whether you're aware, Dr. Simon Young he's done 2 huge fairy census, and, the majority of the people who put forward their experiences, were in adulthood when they had their encounters or experiences with fairies. So it's not just children who are having these experiences, adults also are seeing things that they cannot put down to a ghost or a cryptid or an alien. They're just there's something else that people are saying that must have been, from that realm. It must have been from that fairy realm. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, another friend of mine who lives in York, he's seen fairies
Mhm.
outside of a church. I said, "I'm not joking, Bob. I've seen them."
Yeah.
And when I go to a pub and have a beer, and I talk to, and they just kid me on terribly. I get joked about. Here he comes again, Alien Bill. And he
Oh,
said, and he said,
yeah,
I've taken photos of it. They can see they look like fairies.
yeah, yeah. And you get to an age where you don't care what other people believe, what you're saying or not. I've got to an age where I've had too many experiences to be worried about what anybody else thinks.
Well, yeah, when you talk about what fascinates you about the story, about the events, when you look back and think, "Oh my God, is that true?"
Yeah. So with I do you want me to talk about the Woollerton gnomes with that one? What
Yeah,
what
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm from the county, but I know Woollerton Park quite well. And I think the 2 biggest things really that attracted me to it was how ridiculous it was, but also when you look at the case, how detailed research and documentation that we have. It's up there, I would say, in probably the top 5 most well documented fairy cases in the UK. It's up there with the Cottonley fairies about what documentation that we've got. The children were interviewed 2 days after their encounter by their head teacher, who had the light bulb moment to record them, which was phenomenal. And we have that recording transcribed. And one of the things that consistently happened amongst the group of children was they all told the same aspects of the story without deviation. And even when they were interviewed separately, they were interviewed by the headmaster, they were interviewed by um, TV, they were interviewed by local papers, they were interviewed by Marjorie Johnson, who was part of the Fairy Investigation Society. And other than some minor discrepancies, all the children described these beings in a very similar vein. They all described the vehicles they were in, they all described how they had this laughter language. Not only that, but it seems like the incident took place for about a good 15 minutes, which is phenomenal for an experience. Most experiences last, a minute and a half
Mm,
maximum.
yeah.
We know that from all quarters, don't we? Whether it's cryptid or whether it's UFO or whatever it is, we know it's very short. 15 minutes is a lifetime in these kind of circles. So it was all these things, if we put aside the gnome element, the ridiculous element that it was gnomes, the ridiculous element that they were in hovering cars. If you put those to one side, it's actually incredibly fascinating. One of the other things that came out of that's absolutely intriguing is that the children who were involved, we know that there were 6 involved, there were possibly a couple more. They all went off the radar, as often happens. So tracking them down through records, as Ferry Investigation Society, we have tried multiple times to track them down via radio interviews, via newspapers to see if we can get hold of them. And they've just disappeared. They've just literally. I mean, we've caught the tail end of a couple of them that we think might be the right children.
Right.
Obviously not children now, but they're just
No.
poof, they're just not
Oh,
not on the planet anymore. They're not here.
it's hard, isn't it? It's hard to try and find
Mm.
them.
Yes. And I know many people have tried. Many people have tried over the years to try and get them to come forward. Always with the absolute promise of, it will be an anonymous conversation, or just to say yes, it was me, and it was a hoax, or yes, it was me, yes, it happened. Whatever it is. But after all these years, nothing.
Hard work, in it.
Yeah.
How do you think modern audiences respond to folklore compared to past generations?
Can you say that first bit again? We had a bit of an internet glitch there.
How do you think modern audiences respond to
Yes.
folklore compared to past generations?
Good question. I think the tide's turning, but I think people they lump in folklore with fairy tale and children's stories, and they don't see that there are keys or elements that may be able to unlock certain secrets that we have within the supernatural, especially here in the UK. There are lots of motifs in folklore that we kind of skirt over if we're not careful. So I think it's entertainment. I think people up until a point, probably from the Industrial Revolution, saw folklore as kind of having an entertainment element to it. Whereas prior, it would have been taken very, very seriously. It would have been about keeping people safe. It would have been about the natural rhythms of the land. It would have been about farming and community, and all those keys and indicators for those kind of things in society. And then with modernity and industrialization, people sort of get further and further away from that. Luckily, though, I have seen some real indications that people are taking folklore very, very seriously and looking at it as a way that isn't something stuck in the past, because folklore means of the people.
Hmm?
It means, that people's society, people's history, people's oral histories, people's stories. It's the everyday people. So people are taking that experience much more seriously and reviewing things um, in a way that's not so twee. I think twee is a good word. Up until now, it's been twee.
When you talk about writing, what was the most challenging part of writing Wally Snots?
Oh, editing it, editing it. 7 days to write it, about 250 years to edit it. It felt like it. And then after that, I didn't know what to do with it. So it kind of takes me back to Lionel. I was on the telephone to Lionel's agent. I'd wanted him to come on my podcast, and I instantly got on with Mark, his agent, and we were chatting for way over an hour. And at the end of the conversation, he said, "Oh, so what are you doing for the rest of the day?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just finishing up a book." And he said, "Oh, well, I've got a publishing house. Would you like me to have a look?" And I was
Oh,
like,
sounds
"What? Yes,
interesting.
of course." I know. It was just absolutely out of nowhere. Um, And so that bit, the publishing bit, I didn't have to do the hard slog. I didn't have to peddle it. I didn't have to, go to different agents. Although when I first sent the manuscript over to Mark, he read the first part of it and said, "Oh no, we're not taking on any more fairy stories. There's too many." And I really had to fight tooth and nail and say, "This is not a fairy story. This is a true story. This is
Yeah.
based on a true story." To which he kind of went, "Right then, I'll take it on. I'm gonna do this and take it on." So he was my first publisher, and nothing to do with me, I might add, but he retired not long after. And I soon after found another publisher who took it on. So I was very lucky. But the hardest bits, definitely editing was just a gruel, absolute gruel.
Did you incorporate any personal experiences or encounters in the narrative?
Oh, I'm sure I did. I'm absolutely sure I did. I mean, at the time, there was a group of us who were um, knee deep in researching the case, and we were meeting up twice a year, going into Nottingham, and we were doing things like exploring the Nottingham caving system, and the landscape as a whole to look if there was any geographical connection um, between the gnome sighting and the land it was on. And, so those experiences definitely came into it. I'd been refreshed in going down into the caving system, so that's part of the book. And, I suppose each character's probably got elements of people I know. There is, quirks that each character has. Um, Personal experiences, I actually make an appearance at the end of the book, and that's explained at the end of the book. So I think the biggest experience for me was actually being bothered by the gnomes, and I did feel like they were there on a regular basis, asking questions and saying, "No, no, no, that's not right," or "You need to look over that again. That's not how it happens." So I think as a whole personal experience, it was definitely that relationship that I got with these characters.
Well, one of the questions is, how do you approach writing for young adult readers while still keeping the story layered for adults?
Oh, that's an easy one. I recently went and spoke at Cardiff University to a group of undergrads. They were doing creative writing as one of their sessions, and everybody bar me was saying, think about your audience and make sure that you think about who's going to read it and how it's going to come across to them. And I stood up and said, absolutely don't ever write for anybody else. If you're not writing for yourself, who are you writing for? And I did not write the book for kids. I didn't write it for adults. I wrote I wrote it for me. And it was something because of the characters and the gnomes, it had a lightness to it and a playful aspect to it, which obviously led to it being placed under, available for 7 to 11-year-olds. But to be quite frank, I don't know any 7 to 11-year-olds who have read it. They've all been adults who have bought it and read it. So yeah, right. If you're gonna write for yourself. Don't do it for anybody else.
What do your readers take away from your book about folklore, imagination, or even belief in the unseen?
Oh, good questions. First and foremost, I hope to take away a sense of curiosity. I hope it kind of um, gives it. I wanted to write it in a sense of the awe and wonder of these things. To me, I wanted to be able to put that in the book. That the gloriousness that we have to be able to experience magic within a mundane world, because it is there. It is all, it is all around us. I know that's such a cliche, but all those kind of weird and wonderful experiences that we have when we're paranormal investigators or, supernatural investigators or whatever we do, it just gives a sense of awe and wonder to what else is there, other than the material, other than us, and other than the grounding. And I hope as well that that people get my sense of humour in it. I hope, because I have got quite a dry, quirky sense of humour, so I'm hoping that comes across. And I do say to people, the woolly snots is definitely a comforting. It's like a hot chocolate next to a hot fire in the winter. It's one of those you sit down, snuggle up, and it's not going to tax your brain too much. It's just going to take you on this mirandering journey through the lives of the gnomes.
You know, do you think folklore like that can help us reconnect with natural world?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the gnomes are absolutely a perfect example of how that happens. I mean, out of all the fairies, the gnomes are known to, they love the land, they work the land, they're gardeners, aren't they? We know them from garden gnomes. We know that they're guardians of our gardens. So, and they do bring us back into understanding that we are actually part of that. One of the biggest flaws, I think, of humanity at the minute is we think we're outside of nature, whether superior to it or detached from it, and we're not. We're animals, just like anything else, and being part of that natural structure and natural system means the closer we get to it, the more that we can understand about ourselves. So yeah, definitely. I think the gnomes are a great way into becoming a hippie. I think that they're kind of the one step away from being hippies. Gnomes are.
How does your work as, I think it's airing the Hawthorne, tie
Mhm.
into the theme of the book?
So, Herring the Hawthorn is kind of my umbrella for any kind of creative projects that I take on, but particularly people will know it from my podcast. And like a lot of people, I started podcasting during COVID. And it was a time when everybody needed to connect and everybody was a little bit bored and kind of, sat around doing not a lot. And I was getting a lot of people from the paranormal community contacting me about, particularly about fairies and about what they are, and how they kind of fit in with the paranormal ghost hunting element of things. So I decided to set up Hare and the Hawthorn to sit down with people who I admired, and who I um, thought that they may be able to throw some light into maybe some different light on what fairies are. And that was way back. Well, that was 2000 and whatever it was, 5 years ago. 2020, I think I started that. And my very first guest was the lovely David Wells, the psychic medium David Wells. And it just developed from there. So it's now become more a podcast about supernatural, the paranormal, but always with that kind of fairy slant. So I always try and sort of grapple my guest, whoever's on, to talk about sort of fairies or non-human elementals, non-human entities. But it's literally just Hare and the Hawthorns, my podcast and my artistic umbrella.
what's to be most what's has been the most surprising reaction from readers so far?
Oh, I think two extremes. One friend of mine read it and said, "I can't believe you wrote it," which I took as a compliment.
Yeah.
And another friend of mine said, "I could actually hear your voice while I was reading it," which is a real compliment because it means that I remained authentic and didn't sort of deviate and try and be anybody else while I was writing it. I didn't think I'm going to be Tolkien or whatever. I wrote it as me.
Brilliant. Are there other folklore cases you'd love to explore in future books?
There are, and they are probably about 10 or 12 different cases that I'm going to be. Can't give too much away. January is completely mapped out for me writing another one in the Gnome series. So there's two books in the Gnome series. There's the Woolly Snots, and then there's the Boggers, which I send them out on an adventure. And I wasn't tied to anything then. They weren't tied to the actual encounter. And the third book is going to be a series of short stories that are going to be connected to, I would say, spooky and supernatural cases. So real cases, but the gnomes are going to be brought into it. Can't really say much more than that right now till that
That's
comes out.
fine. That's fine. Right. We've gone to something different. What's first drew you to the world of paranormal investigation?
Absolute fear. That's what drew me to it. Absolute blinking fear. I was so curious growing up, and everything just blew my mind. And I was one of these kids, as a lot of us are, who anything in the natural world that was a bit quirky really drew me in. Anything that was like, cryptozoology drew me in, the Loch Ness Monster, aliens and Bigfoot, the whole shebang. But ghosts, I could not go near at all. I couldn't think about it. I had to a point of not so much a phobia, but not quite far off a phobia of ghosts and particularly poltergeists, and I avoided it like the plague. And I tell you, I started saying this a few weeks ago, so I don't mind it going out.
Right.
Most haunted used to scare me.
No.
Absolutely terrified me. The program terrified me. Terrified me. I would make myself watch about 5 minutes and have to turn it off, and then watch something that was really, really quite cutesy to get over it, to, like, dispel. It's just ridiculous, isn't it? Um, and I got to a point, and I got to a particular big birthday, and I shan't tell you which one, and, I was discussing how I could mark that birthday, and, my brother suggested that I do something that frightens me. Some people swim with sharks, some people bungee jump,
Yeah.
some people fly planes, and, he said, "What scares you?" And I said, "Well, poltergeists." So, like, how on earth am I gonna put myself in a situation with poltergeists? So I booked myself onto a weekend with a really, really good events company, and I went on my own. Said, "I don't want any support, I don't want any friends with me. I'm gonna go on my own." And the first night, I was so terrified. Um, I think it was kind of, do I stay or do I not stay for the second night? And I did, and it was a turning point for me. So
Brilliant.
from there, yeah, absolute turning point. I'd gone from being petrified, laid in bed, it was St. Breville's Castle, laid in bed the first night, not being able to breathe through fear, to the second night, probably running around in the dark going, "Come on then, where are you?" Just that total flip from fear into, "I need to know now. I can't be scared of this anymore." Um, so that's kind of in a nutshell where the spooky side of it started for me. But the research aspect, that's always been there. It's always been picking up books or magazines or listening to podcasts. That's always been there. But actually on the ground researching, investigating, was out of fear.
What's the most compelling paranormal case you've ever worked on?
Oh, there's been quite a few. So I think possibly the most recent. So I work with an events company, but we do residential, and I did recently. I think it was last year before, might have been the year before. A case with "Help My House is Haunted," and that was so intriguing. The family had one of the things issues that the family had was pennies would apport out of nowhere.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they'd just drop out the sky, and they had dozens of them. They would stack them on top of the light switches. If they found one, they'd pick it up and stack it on a light switch. But they were experiencing shadow figures, they were experiencing moving of objects, they were experiencing growls, they were experiencing hearing voices. They're experiencing dark shadows sort of low on the floor.
Yeah.
So I went there as part of the kind of investigation. And as I was walking up the stairs, it was pitch black, and I heard a thud on the floor. So I put my torch on, and there was I think it was Georgian or Edwardian penny on the floor. So I shouted to the guys downstairs and said, "Has anybody left this here?" Thinking it may have fallen and somebody's just, left it there.
Yeah.
Everybody was taking a break from filming, so everybody's downstairs. But Barry guy came up, and he was quite excited because it was a coin. He's a bit of a coin nerd, so he's quite excited about that. And as we were stood chatting about it and saying, "What's this about? What is it with coins?" And just generally discussing it. Um, Something grabbed the back of my coat and tugged it so hard that it kind of jolted me back slightly. That was it. I wasn't going up those stairs on my own again. I was going. The lights were going on, and if I was going up those stairs, somebody was coming with me. But that evening while I was there, the rest of the team, so there was Janie and Barry investigating it. There was so much going on. So I was doing some psychic artistry in one room. I mean, there was so much going on, and you could hear stuff as well as hear them reacting to it. It was very, very surreal. So, I mean, that family must have been. I mean, they've been plagued for months and months with stuff occurring in their property. It was incredible, multiple
How
layers of
long
things.
have they been in the property then?
I don't think it had been that long, maybe a couple of years. I know that they hadn't done extensive renovation, but they'd done a lot of redecoration in the property. And I think it's one of those classic cases that when you're in a property and you're doing it up when you first move in, that you perhaps miss things, or things don't really start ramping up
Yeah.
until you start settling in. That's quite common with people moving into haunted properties.
How do you separate folklore from genuine paranormal evidence?
Um, that I think it's an egg white, egg yolk type of question. That I think they are. When we say folklore, people immediately assume that there's nothing real in it, nothing of substance in it. But I would often say there is. There's always seeds of truth in any tales that are given. And I think when it comes to evidence, when we're working in these kind of realms with these kind of subsections of the paranormal, evidence is a real difficult one, and it's becoming even more difficult. So eyewitness evidence, that is very questionable, and video evidence is questionable. And now we've got into an age where photography is so questionable, it's unreal. You can't believe anything that you see anymore at
No,
all. AI is so good and so clever that, even if you were to see somebody sent you a video of a Bigfoot walking through Manchester High Street, it would look like Bigfoot walking through Manchester High Street, wouldn't it? Um, so it kind of comes down to, I think, boils down to what are we considering evidence these days? What is good evidence? And it's got to be a series of things, hasn't it? It's got to be people's accounts, multiple accounts. It's got to be credible people's accounts, as well as photographic, audio, or visual.
yeah,
So we're in that land where folklore has just as much evidence, I suppose, or stuff to unpick and unpack as you know th- today's kind of evidence-based stuff that we have.
do you think paranormal phenomena are spiritual, psychological, or something else entirely?
I think it's all. I think it's all. I will often say to people that I never doubt anybody when they tell me something, and I never doubt them on different levels. So even if it is, so if somebody was to tell me, and I used this example a couple of days ago, and I don't know why it popped into my head. Somebody came to me and said that they'd seen a 6 foot praying mantis with an Elvis head, and they'd seen it in the local forest. I would never say to that person, "Oh, no, you didn't. Don't be ridiculous." I think my first tact would be, "That's interesting, give me a bit more detail about it." And even if it gets to the end of a conversation and the doubts are growing so strong that they've not had that encounter, my next line that I go down is, they are telling me that for some psychological reason. They're obviously wanting to have this conversation with me for some reason. So for them, telling that story is a reality. So I think it's all joined up. It's all spiritual, it's all psychological, and it's all reality. It can be a moving feast, even in somebody's experience. So, for instance, somebody who sees an angel, for instance, but isn't religious, might say that that angel is a fairy. Or somebody who sees a imp or a goblin who is religious may say that's a demon or a devil. So it's all tied, isn't it? Massively intertied about the perceiver and the receiver of that information.
How can people protect themselves if they believe they're encountered a mischievous spirit or elemental?
Oh, here we go. Now we're getting into the brass tacks. Um, this is a tricky one. So I think and this is where folklore is very, very good. Referring back to historical folklore, particularly. So we can't deal with these beings in the same way that religion would deal with demons. Um, Demons respond to the Lord's Prayer. Respond to religious items, and yes, there is historically within folklore reference to fairies, elementals, or non-human energies responding to that and leaving. I like to think of them as feral children. So if you've got these energies around, they're a bit, they're a bit off the wall and they need calming down. So first and foremost, I'll always say, try leaving some kind of offerings, sweet treats, bit of milk, some butter, some honey, something just to calm them down if they feel like they've got that negative relationship. Next thing to do is, and we know this from folklore, most fairies like a job. They like having a job. They like being put to work. They like, can you go and tend my garden? Can you make sure that the cats don't come in my garden? Can you make sure that the horses are okay in the stable? Can you make sure the cow's butter doesn't turn, sour? All those kind of things. So it's about building a relationship. It's not about banishing. It's not about aggravating. It's not the kind of things that we do with demons or, negative, malicious spirits of the dead. These things can be dealt with quite kindly. These are our neighbours, and they usually knock around for a reason. So if you've got these energies about and they're being mischievous or malevolent, it's usually for a good reason. So finding out that reason would be probably the first port of call and say, have I done something to upset you? What can we do to stop this happening again? Talk to them like they've got the kids who have had too many sweets. I think that's the best way to do it.
I like that. I like that. How do you balance your witchcraft practice with parapsychology studies?
So I don't study parapsychology anymore. I did, and that's yeah. I suppose I do. I suppose as a paranormal investigator, we're always looking at parapsychology. And I do tend to traverse between skeptic and complete believer all the time. I've got kind of two personalities, two sides, and sometimes I'll be stepping into the skeptic, and sometimes I'll be stepping into the true believer. Um, and I think that the balance comes from everything that comes to me in terms of cases or ideas or um, can be looked at through both lenses. It can be looked at, how can I break this down in a real material sense and look at it from that perspective? But also, how can I break this down in a magical sense and see where it may be coming from that perspective? So I actually think having knowledge of both and sort of if you like, a working knowledge of both sides of things just gives a bit more balance to how you go into each and every different scenario.
What role does belief play in whether people experience the phenomena or the paranormal?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question, and one that I have chatted about quite a lot with friends, but never been asked it online before. I think a perfect prime example is when belief is accepted as something that people can verbalize and talk about. And we were just talking about this similar thing just before.
Yes,
So
yeah.
when people are accepted in being able to verbalize, say, for instance, in Ireland, you can talk about the fairies. You can talk about the fairies, and people take it seriously. You know, it's accepted to talk about that. So their belief in fairies make it very much more open for people to say, "I've had this encounter." If you come to the Midlands in the UK and talk about the fairies, you'd be told to sling your hog. You know, it's like, what are you going on about? You're insane, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But doesn't mean that these people don't have a belief. It just means it's suppressed, and it's suppressed through society. I have known people who have had an absolute deep belief in these things and experienced very, very little. I've also had friends who have are hardened skeptics to the point of just being, reductionalists, rationalists. And the kind of these people sidle up and go, I don't know who to tell about this, but I've just witnessed this or I've just experienced this. So it's kind of it's a difficult one because are people not talking because they don't feel like they can be accepted in
Mhm.
what they've experienced?
Yeah.
Or are people talking more because they're in an environment where they can? So it's that weird kind of juxtaposition, isn't it, between belief, non-belief, experience, and non-experience. It's like I don't know whether we'll ever get to the bottom of that question because I don't think people would be 100% honest if we were to do a survey about it.
Probably. I remember doing a show talking to, for his name now, Collins. Got his first name. We did a show. Me and Paul were sat here in room, and I were interviewing him. He was talking about um, interdimensional stuff. And I didn't
Yeah.
realize, but a voice that came through, and it said, "Explain it," in a strange voice. I was on Beacon Light Radio then, and the girl who was in the studio says to me, "Did you hear that voice, Bob?" I went, "No." She said, "I'll play it back to you at the end of the show." And Andrew Collins, I was interviewing, and it says, "Explain it." Anyway, I got
That's brilliant.
somebody to have a look at it. Guy who
Mhm,
works with Robbie Williams. He's got a studio.
mhm.
Met him a few times, and Paul sent it him, and he said it's not coming from Andrew's side. It's not coming from the studio. It's coming in that room where you and Paul are sat.
Mm.
That voice was coming from.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it's a strange house anyway. What Paul bought at the beginning, when he first bought it, he didn't realize at the time, but the old lady who was her husband had died, she was living it, and she passed away. She had bags and bags and bags and bags and bags full of letters.
Mhm.
Paul didn't realize when he burnt them all, she
Mm.
was a spirituous medium. And he
Oh
says to me,
dear.
he said, "Oh my God, after all that time, I wish that I kept them all now to find
Yeah.
out." And then it wasn't long after, um, oh, my name's gone again. He was the Reverend exercise bloke in Briglington at that time. Tom, I can't think of his name. Came knocking Paul's door. He went. So Paul went to the door. I said, "Yeah, can I help you?" He said, "Yeah, I've come to do. Have you just bought the house?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, there's bad things in there. I've come to take it all away for you." So anyway, by the time
Grief.
Paul walked in, he said, "I need to go to that top room." This is where I live now, top flat.
Mm.
I didn't realize, but Paul has got 4 daughters. One of the daughters whose bedroom this was in
Mm,
exercised the building. It followed up, and Paul went, and he's talking about it. Paul's daughter, I think daughter was about 12 at the time. He said, Paul went, I want you out of this house now. Get out.
mm.
He said, I want you out. Don't bother coming knocking on that door ever again. But Paul had
Wow.
seen aliens in the house before.
Mhm.
I've had strange things in the house here, shadow people, all sorts. But, that's where things go when you're taking over a house. And it was the first building on the road. And the bloke called him Blackburn,
Mhm.
called him Black, and they call it Blackburn Avenue. And they've got
Yeah.
houses at both sides now and
Mhm.
across the road now. But people have been across the road and been up all night, poorly, and looked across and said, Paul, I've seen a blue light going through that roof, straight through all the floors and down and gone away. So something's
Wow.
happened in the past history of the house.
Mm.
But, it just makes you think, what could happen
Yeah.
all them years ago. Um, Good question for you, this is. If you could spend a day with any folkloric creature, which would it be?
Oh, folklore creature. Oh, good grief, there's so many. Oh, I know, Jeff the mongoose. I Jeff
Who's
the
that then?
Jeff the talking mongoose. Have a look at the case of Jeff the talking mongoose.
I will do. I
I
will do.
It's honestly, you'll find it fascinating. It was a case on the Isle of Man, and it's one of those cases where you read it and think, is this, it's well documented. Lots of famous people got involved at the time within the paranormal. And you do think, is this a cryptid? Is this a pixie? Is this a poltergeist? Is this the young girl who lived in the house? Is it her ventriloquism? But if Jeff the mongoose, talking mongoose, was an actual character, I would love to sit down and have dinner with him and find out who he was and what he was about.
That sounds interesting. That does.
You'll love it. You'll love it.
Oh, I'll have to have a look at that now. You've got me
Yeah,
thinking about it now.
yeah.
Um, which podcast episode has been your favorite to record and why?
Oh, I've loved all of them. I think some of the most memorable have been those who have been outside of the paranormal community. Very early doors, I got to interview Turner Art Prize winner. Oh, his name's gone out of my head.
It doesn't make
Mark
sense.
Leckie. I don't know, it's one of those nights, isn't it? Mark Leckie. His name is Mark Leckie.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely lovely man, and I don't know how I persuaded him to come on the show and talk to me, but he got into fine art because he had an encounter with a gnome, I think it was, or he called it a goblin. And I was so pleased. And there was another guy, a really, really amazing poet, modern poet, Samuel Hurley. Samuel Hurley? That doesn't sound right either. I'm having one of those nights.
Oh,
So
God, yeah.
oh, good grief! It's like brain fogsville, isn't it? But it's I think it's those people who have no investment in the paranormal, who I've found their stories very, very touching. And everybody I speak to has been very, very genuine. There's been a few that I've been terrified of interviewing just because I have so much admiration for them that it's kind of blown my mind, and I've not been able to talk very well. I've been sort of tongue-tied when I've been talking to them. And I think Dr. David Luke was one of them, where I was like, it's Dr. David Luke. I don't know what, I'm going to look like an idiot here, one of those things. But
I know what
it,
you mean.
every, yeah, everything has been a pleasure with it. Everything has been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, brilliant. Do you think fairies use modern technology to interact with us?
You know what? I have this discussion a lot, and whether fairy music is now more modern, because everybody thinks fairy music is like harps and fiddles and bells, and I'm like, no, no, no. If modern fairies are going to listen to rave music, I can see them out in the woods listening to some kind of drum and bass. But yes, I think they can manipulate modern equipment. I mean, we've got the stories of the aeroplanes in during the wars, and they were called gremlins, weren't they? They said they're the gremlins and the engines.
Yeah,
I do think that, like you were saying about your direct voice phenomena coming through the electronics, so it'd be
yeah.
electronic voice phenomena. I do think that fairies can actually manipulate the same equipment in the same way that the spirits of the dead manipulate those bits of equipment. I think it's just that we're not in tune to picking it up. So if we're going to go ghost hunting, we hear dead, we hear demon on coming through on things. But if we were to hear the word pixie, people aren't going to necessarily associate that with a haunted
No.
property, so wouldn't register it so much. But yeah, I definitely think they can use modern technology to come through and try and communicate with us.
If you'd like to do a podcast with anybody, who would it be?
Oh, good grief! There's probably so many. Um, I did say the other night that there was somebody. So I have in my head a fantasy dinner party, and the list gets longer and longer and longer
Oh,
the
yeah,
the older
yeah.
I get, about anybody living, anybody dead that you'd have round the table. And there was somebody a couple of nights ago, and I just said, "He's just gone on the dinner list," and I can't remember who it was. There are so many people, so many people. Give me a minute to think. Give me another question, and I'll throw it back to you if I come up with anybody.
Yeah. Let's have a look. I don't think you're going to tell me this one. Are there any upcoming projects you're excited about?
Oh, yeah. So, next year, diary is filling up. So I've got lots of events with Ghost Finder Paranormal events, and I think I'm doing at least one a month with those guys. I've got Parameet in June. That's over the solstice in June. Parameet is a fantastic get together of people in the paranormal world.
Oh, brilliant.
Um, I
Whereabouts?
oh,
Whereabouts is that?
that's in Leicester, so it's in Hinckley, so it's in Leicester, so it's nice and central for everybody. It's such a friendly convention, so laid back, so friendly. It's brilliant. I've got I've been out filming with Weird Britain this year, so I'll
Oh,
be
yeah,
on the
I
screen.
know.
Yeah, I'll be on the
Yeah.
screen next year. I'm so excited about that project. It was absolute delight to go out with those guys. I've just finished filming some more with the Supernatural UK. You can find them on YouTube. They've had their first series out, so check that
Oh,
out.
brilliant.
Um, and there is a documentary coming out from America called Fae Folk, which I was super proud to be part of a couple of years ago, and hopefully that should be out next year. Oh, and a new book, at least one, hopefully.
Brilliant. That sounds absolutely marvelous. When do you do your podcast?
As and when I find people, I'm not a religious podcaster. If somebody crops up, if I'm reading something, or if I see somebody, doing a podcast or whatever, and I think we haven't covered that, or really need to chat with them about X, Y, and Z, then I will literally jump on it as soon as I can, and try and grapple people into to doing a podcast ASAP. Um, so they pop up. I'm a lazy podcaster, and that's what I'm trying to say without saying it. I'm a lazy podcaster. It's as and when.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. Everybody to their own. You've probably got more on than what other people have.
I have and I haven't. Yes, I am. I'm very busy. I want to say that.
I like it. So, if anybody wants to find your book, where can they
Mhm.
find it? If anybody wants to got any stories for you, where can they get in touch with you?
So the books are available on Amazon. So just type in Kate Ray. That's there. I think everybody can see that. Or if you put in woolly snots, sometimes it comes up with woolly socks. So, but if you can try it, you can try the woolly snots thing. So that's available on Amazon, and I am across only two platforms on social. So I'm on Facebook and on Instagram. If you put in Kate Hair Girl, Hare girl, you'll find me on both of them there.
Very interesting subject tonight. Everybody's enjoyed it anyway. Everybody in the chat room. Fortunately, nobody had any questions, probably because I said it all. But never mind. So hopefully we might meet up with you sometime this next year at Bempton.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, that'd be good. It'd be interesting to come and check it all
the
weird, wonderful things.
Yeah, just get in touch with Paul.
Yeah.
And he'll tell you when he's available. He's usually available most weekends, but yeah, Weird Breed, and he's a great guy. I've met him so many times. Paul's been on it as well.
Yeah, they are brilliant. Honestly, I spent I think it was 6 days all in all in the upper reaches of Scotland with them. Sort of all day, every day, and I only ever briefly met them for one afternoon. And as I was driving up there, I just thought, I could be meeting up with a couple of serial killers here, and I'll never come back again. You know, what am I getting myself in for? But I had the best week with them. They were just amazing, amazing guys.
Yeah, I'm glad you had a great time, and I'm sure we'll see more of you on TV.
Hopefully, it would be nice. It would be nice if anybody's out there that wants to do any projects, then yeah, it'd be really good.
Well, thank you again for coming on the show. It's been wonderful. I know you'll always come back on again.
Yeah, sure.
I'll have to come on yours sometime as well.
Yeah, definitely.